This is Joe Barone, the CEO and corporate learning consultant of A Fool for Learning. And our foolish thought for the day is sexual harassment training with Kurt Nemes, part two. Kurt is the founder of Working with Respect LLC, along with his wife, Laura Zam, and has over 40 years of experience in education, organizational training, and instructional design. He worked for the ethics office at the World Bank, and his training took him to over 40 countries for the World Bank. Currently, he's developing a sexual harassment prevention training for the Millennium Challenge Corporation, a federal international development agency, and he's also working as a workplace coach. Kurt, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Joe. Great to be here.
And in the second part of our presentation, our podcast, the second podcast we're going to do with you today, what I'd like to talk with you about is why should an organization do this sort of training? What happens if this sort of training is not done in an organization?
Okay, great question. Since Me Too, a lot of states have mandated mandatory employers do sexual harassment training every year or every 2 years. And the restrictions actually have become more tighter, whereas in the past, in some states, it was if you had 50 or more employees, then you had to do this training. California, for example, just lowered that to 5. So small businesses that have 5 employees have to have this training. And New York made it recently that any business, no matter what the size, has to do sexual harassment training every so often. So there's a compliance element to it for the first part.
And so even if even if I'm a sole employer in New York, does that mean I have to do some sort of online training? Just curious.
Well, you can do training in any way that is offered. Online training is one way to do the training, sexual harassment training, and it's shown not to be that effective. But most organizations can purchase these kinds of trainings off the shelf if they want to.
And so, can we talk just a little bit about why this sort of training is needed? What happens in organizations that may not have this sort of training?
Well, if you've been watching the news for the past 3 years, you've seen what can happen to an organization. For example, the Weinstein Corporation, they had a very high-performing person, Harvey Weinstein, and it was known for years and years and years that he was a sexual predator. And yet they did a cost-benefit analysis, and they said, well, we can just pay off these people, and that's cheaper than actually getting rid of our star performer. Well, as you know now, that company is out of business. They went bankrupt, and it really, the brand was destroyed. And there are risks like that. Every day in the newspaper we read about another allegation of sexual harassment or another lawsuit, and these lawsuits can really add up for organizations. Just to handle a lawsuit, if a person goes to the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission and reports sexual harassment in their workplace, an employer on the average spends $125,000 preparing to fight that lawsuit. And if they lose the lawsuit, then it could be millions of dollars of reparation and legal fees that they pay to the person who is harassed. So there's really a business case for doing this.
But even before you get to, let's say, the legal aspect, a lawsuit, in what ways does it cost an institution or a company? Mm-hmm. What are some things that sexual harassment in the workplace will cost? How does it harm an organization?
Right. Very, very good question. It's there are a lot of measurable costs that actually present sizable risks to organizations. One of the things that you see in workplaces where they consider hostile work environment that allows sexual harassment and harassment is there's high turnover. And it costs, I just heard the other day, an average of 200% of a person's salary to replace them. Mm-hmm. So that's a major cost. Mm-hmm. People take more sick days. and there are stress-related illnesses, so
Mhm.
productivity goes way down, and there are more disability claims, and then people also start checking out, their productivity wanes, um, and actually they can start sabotaging the employer, stealing from the company,
Mhm.
and those kinds of things. So
Mhm.
there are a lot of quantifiable costs.
And that's interesting to note. I hadn't thought about. I've thought about some of them, but not all of them. So I think that's really an important thing to think about as um, an organization and the head of an organization and dealing with this particular issue. The final question I have for you, Kurt, is let's say you have a small company, maybe 5 or 6 people. We're not talking about New York or California, just in
Mhm.
general, maybe 5 or 6 people. Maybe it's a husband and wife who run the company, and then they have a couple of employees, which is kind of fairly typical.
Mhm.
Um, but there are no issues of any sort of sexual harassment going on. Should they take this sort of training? Will it help? Will it harm? Will it make? In other words, sometimes you try to do good things and it brings harm, more bad than good. So what I'm saying to you, the bottom line question to you is, if you have a small organization, everything is running okay, is this something that should be done?
Well, I would say first, if you're in that position, to check with your lawyer to see if there's like a state regulation
Hmm.
that you have to have this kind of
Hmm.
training. The other thing, just because a company doesn't see sexual harassment or there are no reports of sexual harassment, you have to realize that people are really scared of um, raising it as an issue or reporting it because of fear of retaliation, fear of lack of confidentiality, fear of being fired, obviously, and which is what we see playing out all the time in the press. So it may be there, and people just don't know about it because people are afraid to speak up. So I think it's always good as a preventative thing. And then also, um, you know, being treated like a human being is a human human right,
Hmm.
and you shouldn't. Most organizations have the philosophy that you should the employer has to provide a safe and secure workplace for their employees. So this is part and parcel of that. Creating a values-based workplace where people feel comfortable speaking up and not fearing, challenging the status quo, and then also are not subject to untoward behaviors.
Well, Kurt, thank you very much for being part of our second podcast and talking about what happens if what can happen in a workplace and what happens if this sort of training is not conducted. Um, Kurt, if someone wants to get a hold of you to either speak with you about this type of training or maybe to bring you into their organization for you to conduct this sort of training, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, good question. Well, they can reach me through my website, which is workingwithrespect.com, or they can call my cell phone number, which is 202 403 9084. I'd be happy to discuss options or even just give advice.
And our next podcast, we'll talk a little bit to Kurt about how does he stay on top of on what I like to call on top of his game, meaning how does he stay abreast of what's happening in this particular field and keeping and knowing all of the different resources that are available. This is Joseph Barone, the CEO and corporate learning consultant of A Fool for Learning, signing out. Remember, learn, perform, succeed.